Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventures. I'm your guide Jason. If you're a fan of anime, you've probably heard of a series called Freiren. There's a few hundred videos across YouTube talking about how great this series is. But there is one aspect that I do want to look at: the folk magic. Freiren is a fantasy manga and anime that follows the title character Freiren. She was the elven mage in the hero's party to defeat the Demon King, and the first episode is literally their victory celebration. Afterwards, Freiren travels around the land and fulfills her hobby of collecting spells in the form of grimoires. And what kind of epic spells does the world's most revered mage collect? Well, if you have watched Freiren, you will know that it is a slow burn of a series, one which focuses more on the characters than the battles, and this is reflected in the spells that Freiren collects. They are remarkable spells to turn sweet grapes into sour ones, one to perfectly flip pancakes every time, and the spell that I want the most, one to always speak tongue twisters without difficulty. If I had that spell, it would cut down on the length of my recordings for these videos by half, I bet. That would save me so much time when it comes to editing. Now, I want you to do a little test. Don't worry, all you got to do is pause this video and go for a walk in the kitchen. You can fix yourself a little snack while there. In fact, it might help with this test. Rummage through the drawers. How many weird little tools have you collected? How many different spatulas and spoons? I bet you got some wooden spoons, some metal, and a few plastic, right? Why? Well, they're each used for a different purpose. And that is the point of folk magic. It is spells designed to make everyday tasks easier. And this is true in our world. Most inventions aren't designed for war and conflict, but everyday tasks. They make a little gizmo and watch it to do one particular task, but it does it nearly perfectly. So, in a world of magic, you would think that spells would be designed to do these tasks. And this is what I am talking about, being a brilliant design for magic in this series. This is called folk magic. Much of these spells are seemingly stupid. I mean, what is the brilliance about being able to turn grapes from one flavor to another? No, this is actually brilliant. Flavors are important. Yep, and that is the key to making different kinds of wine. This stupid little spell would be loved by chefs. In theory, it should be modifiable to use for other kinds of food. Think about it. One of the most valuable resources on caravans are spices, herbs, and ingredients, which can't be grown in one area, are being shipped to another for an exorbitant price. This little spell can change sweet grapes to sour, could be used to turn one kind of herb into another. Sure, it would probably require the two different herbs to be very similar, but it's a start. Something like this could radically change the entire trade routes in crops. Likely, you wouldn't need to focus so much on perfecting the breed of grapes you grow. Of course, the quality of the sour grapes may be tied to either the quality of the magic or that of the sweet grapes. But surely not all these silly spells are worth something. I mean, what good is a spell to flip pancakes? Let's look at this spell fully. What are the facets of it? Well, this is a focused levitation spell mixed with a movement one, isn't it? In addition, it has to be able to land them so that it won't mess up another pancake. This is a kind of spell that has an extremely high level of precision and control in it. You got to move the whole thing at once. If you don't, it will break. This is vastly superior to putting a spatula under the pancake before moving it. This spell also has some sort of spatial detection in it. You can modify this spell to maneuver through a forest or a trap-filled terrain without setting them off. Basically, all this would need to be is to push you away from things. And then, this spell gently lays the pancake down. This means a deceleration aspect in the levitation mechanic to prevent it from splattering. This is actually a pretty complicated spell being used to flip pancakes. What about the tongue twister spell I talked about earlier? Freiren uses this to give instructions under difficult situations, such as being dragged around by a kraken. And I want this to put an end to all my flubs when reading my scripts. This spell is basically a motor control and linguistic spell. The first part is a buffing mechanic focused on the mouth to provide for what amounts to dexterity of the tongue and a cognition boost. Would this be considered a thought speed boost, a reaction time, or an intelligence buff? I don't know. Now, improving the tongue dexterity isn't the most beneficial thing, outside of things like kissing and the like. But the cognition one is a whole other beast. This sounds like a spell which smooths out the mind-body connection and improves mental processes. That's pretty impressive to be sure. I do wonder how the spell would work if you had to deliver a speech. Could it calm your nerves? I'm betting it would. And I think we all know how nervous it can be to deliver a speech. In addition, you could use it while in a dangerous situation to help keep your orders clear. Yeah, that's actually an insanely useful spell, and it's being used for tongue twisters. But there are other spells which she did learn. One character named Freiren had the chance to learn any spell she wanted, and she chose a spell to clean clothes. Does this sound like a waste? No, it isn't. We have washing machines in our world. Have you tried washing clothes by hand? It sucks. I've had to do it on long hiking trips. But nowadays, I just separate my clothes out, throw it in the washer, add some soap, and push a button. And then I get to sit around on my butt. I like it a lot more. And there are even dryers, which means you can skip the step of setting it all out on the line for a few hours. Of course, a fantasy world is going to come up with some sort of spell. Every adventuring party will need this spell. Do you know how much blood they will need to wash out of their clothes? Gallons of it. And then they got mud mixed in. Oh, and they are going to sweat. Of course they will want a spell to clean their clothes. Else they are going to smell. But what is this spell? It's a cleaning and likely a disinfection spell. And guess where else those spells are going to be needed? In medicine and wound care. Yep, we could use this spell to achieve the same thing in concept. In addition, the drying aspect of the spell could be used to deal with being drenched in water, or after you swim across a river. This can be the difference between life and death when the weather turns foul. Yeah, it would be moronic to say a fantasy world would never create such a spell. What about another silly spell? One designed to make eggs easier to peel and prevents the shells from falling away. This is incredibly mundane. What is the practical application of this spell? All this spell does is prevent eggshells from falling into the batter or your omelet. Well, what is this spell? It holds things together even while pulling it apart. You could use a version of it to keep bread and crackers from crumbling. This could make cleanup so much easier. Anyone who's had to slice a few loaves of bread in a row will know how messy it is. But there's other uses, and again, it's medicine. Such a spell could be used to hold skin together in place of stitches. Yet, could it be used to help prevent cuts to some extent? Yeah, this is another spell which sounds silly, but depending on the exact mechanics of how spells and grimoires work, you could use it in a surprising way. The last spell I want to talk about is Freiren's favorite, and that is a spell to create a field of flowers. There are a few limitations with it, such as seeds, as we see in the episode where we search for weeks for a lost kind of seed. But still, it can grow a full field of flowers in an instant. That's more powerful than it seems. Sure, Ciri, the ancient elf mage who rules over the Mages Association, mocks it. And Ciri is an idiot. Sure, she's a several thousand-year-old mage who trained many notable mages, but she has no idea how to use her spells. Do you remember when I spoke about the use of the spell to make sweet grapes sour, and how that could influence trade routes? This spell could do even more. If a merchant could get seeds, they could quickly flood the market with rapidly grown crops of these expensive seasonings and herbs. But in a fantasy world, that would also include medicinal and alchemical ingredients being grown. I know, I've said it before, that plant growth spells might result in inferior quality, but it could still work. Yeah, and that is before you factor in combative flowers. Let's say you can grow an entire field of poisonous plants, best if done in its pollen. Under this condition, you could create a deadly trap for your foe to walk into. I'm sure we've all seen it in a video game, a field of poison or rot that you have to maneuver around. And using it in this way, you could use a flower field as a trap. Yeah, this is a major difference than a spell that is used to decorate the ground. Yeah, there is a reason that such a spell is often used in Dungeons & Dragons as plant growth. Still, its full potential isn't even used there. I do wonder what other kinds of spells could be created. This is something we do see in this series. There is a demon named Qualler who wielded an instant kill spell called Zoltrak. During the Heroes campaign, they sealed the demon away to be dealt with a few decades later. And in those years, where the demon is sealed away, the spell is studied and dissected until it has been converted from a deadly spell into common offensive magic, and with it, the foundations of modern defensive magic. And this is a theme throughout the series. Things advance and change, and that includes spells. Potentially, the goofy spells I looked at today were derived from more combat-oriented spells, or were the combat spells converted from farming spells. That is a discussion for the progression of spells with technology. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Please return next time. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.